is 42.
So, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning for sure for the people who are joining from the Western and East US part of the world. So here we are today. We are going to we are hosting this web event on transition to circular economy and what India needs for transition from linear to circular economy. Today on this panel, you can see Mr. Tarun Singhal, myself, Dr. Shalini Sharma, and Ms. Kanta Singh and Ms. Nidhi Dua. So I'll briefly introduce our co-host, Mr. Tarun Singhal. Mr. Tarun Singhal is a Director, Business Development and Marketing and Communications with Sopra Steria India and Sopra Banking Software India. With over close to 3 decades of industry and leadership experience, Mr. Singhal is well-acknowledged professional and one of the most networked individuals you would have come across. As the social outreach, he is a treasurer of British Business Group, Vice President Chevening Alumni India. He is an EC member, Association of British Scholars Delhi. He is an Industry Advisory Board member, ACSE, the University of Sheffield. He's an advisor of Center of Innovation, Entrepreneurship and Development, BIMTech. He's member of Sales Marketing Interest Group at NASCOM, and he's on the various advisory board and panels across various organizations in the country. One of the key things I should say that he's president of Navy Children's School Alumni Association. So that is something I should say. And the additional thing what I say that he's also an advisory board member of Sanshodhan and E-Waste Exchange. That's our company. So with this introduction, I hand over the co-host. I hand over to Mr. Tarun Singhal to co-host this session with us. Over to Tarun.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shalini. Appreciate that. So hello, everyone. And thank you so much for joining us today for the webinar on transition from linear to circular economy. It is an initiative taken by the British Business Group Delhi, Marks and Spencer's India, Sopra Steria and Sopra Banking Software India, Government of Telangana, Sanshodhan, UN Women, ICE, and SDGs. I'll precisely share the background and the purpose of this event. As most of you must be aware, the world population is growing, and this is affecting the environment. To ensure there is enough food, water, and prosperity in 2050, we need to switch from a linear to a circular economy starting now. That's why numerous government-wide programs for a circular economy are undertaken. The aim is to ensure healthy, safe living and working conditions and cause less harm to the environment. For a long time, our economy has been linear. This means that raw materials are used to make a product, and after its use, any waste like packaging is thrown away. In an economy based on recycling, materials are reused to ensure that in the future, there are enough raw materials for food, shelter, and other necessities. Our economy must become circular. That means preventing waste by making products and materials more efficiently and reusing them. If new raw materials are needed, they must be obtained sustainably so that the natural and human environment is absolutely not damaged. Now, with setting that context in, without further ado, we will turn the time over to our esteemed speakers for today. The flow would be that I would introduce all our speakers for the day briefly, and thereafter request the moderator to beam a spotlight one by one in the order of introduction on each one of them so that they could share a little bit more about themselves and also their initiatives in this focus area. So let me start by introducing, and we're really privileged to have Mr. Jayesh Ranjan, IAS, Principal Secretary, Department of Industries and Department of IT, Electronics and Communications, Government of Telangana with us. He's actually going to join us very shortly. He's been called just a few minutes back by the CM's office, but nevertheless, I'll do the introductions and he will speak as he joins in. So Mr. Jayesh Ranjan's assignment involves developing policy frameworks, attracting new investments, identifying opportunities for utilizing IT in various government processes, and promoting the digital empowerment of the citizens. He is a part of the national pool of trainers in leadership constituted by the Government of India and is involved in training and mentoring newly recruited civil servants. Amongst his other distinctions, he was awarded the Royal Order of the Polar Star by His Majesty, the King of Sweden in 2019. We also have Dr. Andrew Fleming, who is going to join us very shortly from the British High Commission in Andhra Pradesh. Dr. Fleming became the Deputy British High Commissioner to the Andhra Pradesh and Telangana government in July 2017. His role includes promoting business and trade between the UK and India's Telugu region and connecting with the people on local issues. For example, Dr. Fleming participated in Swachh Bharat initiatives to clean up Hyderabad and encouraged others to join in as well. As the head of the Deputy High Commission, he has supported projects on community cohesion and interfaith, countering violence against women, human trafficking, child sexual abuse, fake news, and youth empowerment. I'm really honored to introduce Ms. Kanta Singh, Country Program Manager, UN Women, Delhi. She is a development professional with over 20 years of multicultural experience in the management of pro-poor, pro-women development programs in organizations such as the United Nations Development Programme, Women Power Connect, International Foundation for Electoral Systems, Women in Sustainable Enterprises, WISE, and Center for Social Research. We also have with us Ms. Nidhi Dua, who is the head India and Sri Lanka Marks and Spencers. Ms. Dua is an experienced head of region with a demonstrated history of working in the sourcing and retail industry. She is skilled in the trend analysis, textile industry, operations management, global sourcing, and retail. Before MNS, she was associated with various global companies like Gap, H&M, French Connection, and many more. Ms. Dua is also a secretary at the British Business Group. Next, we have Dr. Shalini Sharma, who is a doctorate in environment science, management, and policy. She is an alumna of Humboldt University, Columbia University, and Oxford University, and is the founder of disruptive, globally recognized waste management company, Sanshodhan, an e-waste exchange. Her innovation, tech-based circular economy model for e-waste management sector is recognized as highly commended, the Circulars 2019 by World Economic Forum, Davos. Our organization has also won Global SDG Challenge awarded by Responsible Finance and Investment, United Kingdom, and DDCAP, Abu Dhabi. Dr. Sharma has worn various hats in her career path as mentor startups, team leader, head of Center for Climate Change, environment management consultant, network and coalition builder, lecturer, and researcher. So may I now request Ms. Kanta Singh to please formally introduce herself in her own words and also share about her initiatives in this program. Ms. Kanta Singh.
We have Andrew just joined in.
Yes. So welcome, Andrew.
Yeah, so shall I start?
Yes, yes, ma'am, please.
Thank you, and namaste sabhi ko mera. It's such a privilege to be amongst fellow achievers, and that I realize now that many of you, in fact, I think all of you are Achieving Fellows. I also happen to be one, and it's a great privilege for me to be here. Good evening and good morning and good afternoon to everyone listening to this program. My name is Kanta Singh, as shared by Tarun, and I have been working only with women and for women for my entire career. I started as a gender trainer in Center for Social Research, and today I'm with the UN Women for the last 2 years. And my entire journey has been devoted to influence policies, influence programs, budgets, and schemes for women and girls, of course. So it's been very interesting journey. And in the bargain, you know, when you are working with the women, you realize that they are always considered beneficiaries. And I have seen in the last 25 years, I've seen them moving from that beneficiary tag to contributors tag. And most of their work is in unorganized sector, also in the circular economy. So it's very interesting that we are talking about circular economy and role of women here. And I have seen their journey from that angle. I will share more about my work later, but right now I'm handling a program called Second Chance Education, which also focuses on circular economy a lot. We are working in 4 states, Maharashtra, Odisha, Bihar, and Rajasthan. NCR is another area where we'll start working. We work with the most marginalized women and girls. 8 out of the 12 districts we are present in are aspirational districts. And many of these women have never been to school. Even the young women are out of formal schools or educational system. So we start with education. We help them complete their education through an IOS and State Institute of Open Schooling. We help them get skilled and then get into formal employment if they are in a position to, or if companies are ready to offer them jobs. And the last pillar of our work is entrepreneurship. And this is where the issue of circular economy comes in. I'll talk more about that later. But the Second Chance Education Program and the Women's Economic Empowerment Program that UN Women implements, I'm in charge of that. And we are touching almost 40,000 lives right now, and in the process of involving many more in the coming years. Thank you. I'll come back to you later.
Thank you so much, Kantaji, and I have great privilege to welcome Shri Jayesh Ranjanji. Thank you, sir, for joining us. We did get the message that you were called by the CM's office, but we really appreciate you have joined in. So we just started, sir, with the introductions, and we're going with the flow. And Kantaji just shared briefly about herself and also the work she's been doing. So while we let you to settle down, and we'll probably move to Dr. Andrew Fleming. If you want to, please, you can just share a little bit about yourself, Dr. Fleming, and also the work you have been doing in this area as part of your role as Deputy British High Commissioner.
Thank you, Tarun. Just to be clear, I had a lot of trouble connecting. I apologize for that. You want me just to introduce myself, or you want me to make my whole presentation now?
I think I've already introduced all of you. So all attendees are aware, and plus somebody like you doesn't need any introduction. You're a very popular personality in India. And so it would be good if you talk about your initiatives and some of the areas you're working in sustainability and these programs.
Sure. No, I just wanted to be clear what you wanted from me at this stage. That's fine. And, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's great to be among you. You are all Cheveners. I'm not a Chevener, but I'm definitely a champion of Chevening. In all the countries I've worked, I've had a lot of happiness and joy in interacting with people that have become Chevening alumni, have come back with wonderful stories, many connections, and of course I know a number of you quite personally. So it's a pleasure to be among you this afternoon, and thank you for your warm welcome. Shift in policies and perspectives in tackling climate change, and the circular economy can play an essential role to that. So switching to renewable energy and e-mobility plays a vital role in addressing climate change, but this alone will not be enough. In order to achieve global climate targets, it's critical that we transform and work towards the transition to a circular economy which can enable us to meet the immediate needs while also creating a resilient economy. The circular economy can make a huge contribution to climate change because we know it is one of the most effective forms of intervention that can reduce carbon emissions whilst maintaining a healthy and inclusive economy. And the concept of circular economy has already been put into practice successfully across the landscape, sending a clear message to governments, to businesses, to investors, and to citizens that the future is low carbon. Leadership by businesses and industry will play an important complementary role and offers, I think, great potential. And like India, UK has made significant progress in this area and has decarbonised its economy comparatively, I think, quite fast to many other like-for-like nations. We are also working on creating a Green Leadership Alliance that brings together existing industry-led initiatives, platforms, networks for consolidating their strengths to scale up voluntary adoption of low carbon solutions by business. So there is a huge potential for this alliance to enhance industry's contribution towards realizing India's nationally determined contributions, eventually contributing to the circular economy. And as we understand that circular economy goes beyond recycling, the way we design an approach that would contribute to clean and resilient recovery, building on the principles of the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goals. We urge businesses, investors, cities, and regions across, sorry, my phone. I was saying cities and regions across India to commit to Race to Zero, a global campaign to shift a decarbonised economy ahead of COP26 and reaching net zero emissions by 2050. The UK government will continue to do everything in its power to ensure climate change is at the top of the global agenda. The COP26 provides a perfect platform to further our commitment in this regard. And, from our office, we're trying to engage in as many ways as we can, with as many different stakeholders as we can, on all of the themes that would be relevant to and be discussed in the COP. And some of you are part of this already. I hope, we'll continue to build our alliance and be able to influence. And I don't believe there's any group that is better placed to influence and persuade and shift policy than our wonderful group of Cheveners. A little bit about UK's action. The UK is committed to moving towards a more circular economy, which will see us keeping resources in use as long as possible. Technology, I believe, is on our side. As we rebuild our economies to a clearer future, innovations in energy storage technologies, smart electricity grids, and zero emission vehicles are some of the technologies that can help us to pioneer a path to greener growth. This is an opportunity that we are grasping in the UK because we believe that the green growth is the right thing to do. To achieve this, clean growth strategy has been set out in one of our 4 grand challenges in the UK's industrial strategy that was launched last year. The missions of which are 1, at least halve the energy of all new buildings by 2030. 2, to establish the world's first net zero carbon industrial cluster by 2040 and at least 1 low carbon cluster by 2030. And 3, exploring new and innovative ways to manage emissions from landfill. And also, UK has become the first major economy to legislate for net zero. So in conclusion, I believe that contributing to the circular economy is not just the right thing to do, but also the smart and economic thing to do, because the commercial opportunities can be realized in the low carbon economy. We need all in the country to join new, high resilient and low carbon revolutions. Thank you, everybody. You will forgive me that I will be a little bit in and out during the rest of your session. I have to record a video from somebody that was delayed due to a delay in their flight. But I congratulate all for this session, and I look forward to being part of it as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Appreciate you joining in, and really insights. We've gathered some insights, and I'm sure over the course of the session, we'll have more insights and know-how from you. And it would be my pleasure now to invite Ms. Nidhi Dua to please share what you as an individual or as MNS, your efforts towards sustainability in India and other parts, Nidhi. So that would be really nice if you can share that. Over to you.
Thanks, Tarun. Good afternoon, good morning, everybody. I'm Nidhi Dua from Marks & Spencer. I'm not going to introduce myself further because I think Tarun has done a great job doing that. So in the next 5 minutes or so, I'm going to talk about the initiatives that M&S as a company is taking and what is the part I'm playing in those initiatives. So the next 5 minutes, I'm going to be talking you through that. So in early 90s itself, M&S realized that there is a need for circular economy. And realizing that need, we came up with something called Plan A. And why we named it Plan A was because we thought there is no Plan B. We all have to do this. So that's how the name Plan A came up. And the aim of Plan A was to build a sustainable future by being a business that enables and creates a positive impact on well-being, communities, and planet through all we do. So when UN came up with the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015, our plan was already in sync. And I'm not sure how many of you know, but M&S became the first major retailer in the world to get fully carbon neutral in 2012. And this was a few years after we launched our Sustainability Plan A mission. And a lot of it is actually stemming from the savings that we could get from the Plan A. And to talk a little bit more about how we got carbon neutrality was by reducing energy usage, by investing in renewable energy, and also carbon offsetting through 2 very, very big windmill power plants, which fortunately happened to be in India. So that is how M&S as a global retailer achieved its carbon neutrality. So, we all talk about circular economy. However, we have to understand that though circular economy is the need of the hour, it is definitely not an easy one because it not only impacts the processes, but it also impacts the lives. And it also calls for a lot of behavioral changes, which we all know are not easy. And we have to ensure that this transition from a linear to circular economy happens in a justified manner, or what we call as just transition, so that everybody in the supply chain gets impacted positively and not negatively. So keeping this very point in focus, our Plan A has been updated several times, and especially to reflect the evolution of the business, to take care of the risk and opportunities that the social and environmental issues pose for us. And in 2017, M&S took a leap forward by announcing an ambitious plan to help people, product, and the planet. And we aim to achieve all this by 2025. And I will be talking to you about each of these initiatives in brief. Shalini, could you move to the next slide, please? No, this was the fourth slide, the second. Yeah. Yeah, so this is our evolving framework around people, product, planet, and you can see on the right side, the sustainable development goals that conform with all three people, product, and planet. So in people, the two key initiatives are, we could move on to the next slide. So in people, the two key initiatives are that we want to help communities with well-being. And how we want to bring that well-being is, as you would know, that M&S has a very good and robust food operation. So we want to bring them well-being through offering them healthy food. And second is around women. And we would like to make sure that by 2025, 25% of the women in our supply chain, in the entire supply chain, are in supervisory roles. So that is a very, very ambitious target, considering our reach in multiple countries that we are present. It is definitely an ambitious target for us. In people, what we've done is that in India, we run a project called Power, which is in collaboration with the British High Commission. And this project aims at bringing gender equality in our supply chain. So even though in our supply chain, about 65% are women, but what we've seen is that these women tend to be at the grassroots levels, and very few of them, if at all, manage to make it to the supervisory level. So this project aims at creating awareness, training, grooming them, skilling the women to take on supervisory roles. But at the same time, we also work with the men to sensitize them so that they can handle these empowered women with dignity and respect. And the current outreach of this program has been 32,000 workers in our 20 factories. So the second project that we are working on, and this is one of the flagship projects of Marks & Spencer, is ICHW. It stands for Integrated Community Health and Wellness. And in this project, what we do is that we adopt villages or communities, and we work for the overall upliftment of these villages or communities in every aspect. The aspects could be health, education, empowerment, livelihood, financial literacy, creating ease of life. So we work on all these things, and we make sure that the village actually moves on to the next level in all these parameters. So moving on to the product. Now we want to make sure that all the product, all the garments that we sell are made of sustainable raw materials. So what we do is that we collaborate with farmers, and we collaborate with cotton growers, and we help them cultivate the cotton or the crop in a sustainable manner. So all the cotton that is used in our products is 100% sustainable and traceable. And we achieved this milestone in 2019, making M&S the first retailer in the world to do so. We also use a lot of organic cotton. We use sustainable viscose, recycled polyester, and many other recycled fibers. We also partnered with Oxfam, where we enable our customers to return old clothes and buy new ones. And we repurpose or recycle them to ensure that these garments do not find their way to the landfills. We believe in 100% transparency, and we are completely open about our supply chain. So to be able to do that, we disclose our vendors on our website, along with all the necessary details about them. Now, moving on to the planet aspect, I already mentioned that M&S got carbon neutrality in 2012 itself for our global retail operations. We work on making eco factories or green factories, you may call it. We believe in chemical due diligence. We're very, very particular about the kind of chemicals that are used in our products for dyeing or for washing or be it anything else. Effluent treatment plants are very, very important. We ensure that all the water that is used for washing a product actually gets recycled and reused for a product again. And we also believe in reducing waste, especially plastic waste, and reusing it. And I think a good example of that is that one of the villages that we work with, we have actually created a community where we are recycling our hangers. So I've given some statistics. So in the last 1 year, we were able to recycle 53 lakh hangers. And also, we saved 240 tons of plastic. And more importantly, we were able to generate livelihood or wages for the community workers. We were able to generate about 25 lakhs worth of wages for the workers, which was really a great thing, because it helped us save plastic. It helped them save money. And also, we have made a commitment that all our packaging and plastic is going to be recyclable by 2022. So on that note, I'm going to hand over back to Tarun. And of course, I'm around for any questions that you might want to ask me later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nidhi. And I'm sure there are lots of learnings from wonderful work which has been done by MNS and which you are spearheading in India. And without now much delay, may I request, and I'm really delighted to invite our guest of honor, Shri Jayesh Ranjanji, Principal Secretary, Government of Telangana, to address all of us as a keynote address and and also enlighten us and guide us what differently and what else we can do in this area. So, sir, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tarun. Greetings to all the fellow panelists. Greetings to all the attendees. My apologies that I have not been able to join on time, but still I'm very happy that I'm here and getting this chance to interact with all of you. Another apologies in advance that I may have to leave after a while because tomorrow the Prime Minister is having an interaction with all the Chief Ministers. So there is a briefing session scheduled for me with our Chief Minister, starts at 5 o'clock. So I may have to leave, but as Andrew said, I'll try to come back and listen to the rest of the discussions as well, because this is a topic which is of tremendous relevance to us, both in the national government and in the state government like Telangana. And incidentally, I mean, it's such a nice coincidence. I just mentioned about the Prime Minister's interaction tomorrow with the CMs. This is one of the points which is being discussed. The progress the states have made on sustainable development goals. This is one of the important agenda items. And there is going to be not just a review of which state is ranked on which SDG where, but how are the better performing states doing? What are the reasons? What is the reason why the states which are not that better performing are lagging behind? So very important platform tomorrow for a nationwide discussion between the Prime Minister and the CMs. But nevertheless, I'm very happy that we are ahead of the curve and we are discussing all these important issues today itself. So what I'll do is that instead of being all over the place, I'll try to pick one particular sector where I have personal interest, and my job responsibility also requires me to take responsibility of that particular sector. And since no one else has spoken about that, I'll use that as an example to tell what the government wants to do and how the government wants to do in a partnership vote. So what I would like to speak about is electronic waste or e-waste. We heard about textiles and plastics from Nidhi and the general concepts about sustainability and circular economy from Andrew, Kantaji and Shalini. But I'll take the example of e-waste, as I said. Now, e-waste is a phenomenon about which we all are familiar with. And in the last 10, 12, 11 months in particular, when lots of work shifted from home and the usage of gadgets increased many, many folds, e-waste has become a challenge much bigger than before. And the safe disposal of e-waste, apart from environmental and safety perspectives, there is also a very strong livelihood issue involved with e-waste. Because as you know, there is a chain of livelihoods. There are pickers at the most primary level. Then there are first level of sorters, then recyclers, and then of course very organized form of refurbishing and reusing some of the electronic components and products. And at every level, there are issues of lack of safety, exploitation, non-compliance with rules, safety standards, and so on and so forth. And obviously the great loss which happens to the economy per se. So e-waste is something which, as I said, is very important from a circular economy point of view. Now, I would like to very quickly tell about what we have actually been doing on e-waste, so that instead of speaking in a very hypothetical way or a kind of or a conceptual way, I'll tell you about the action which has been taken in Telangana. So Telangana has been one of the earliest states which came out with a dedicated e-waste policy. While there are national solid waste management rules, e-waste rules, there are lots of court judgments, including from the Supreme Court. Pulling the best out of these, getting the most practical points implemented on the ground has been a very important requirement for us. And so what we have done is that, one is that we have designed this e-waste policy. And the most important thing is, see, there are all kinds of policies. India is known to have great policies which look good on paper, but there is always a kind of a question mark on their implementation. And this is something which people comment about India on many occasions, that great policies are written, but they don't translate into action. So, and if you really dive deep, why is it that policies don't materialize on ground? One of the reasons you find is that no one takes ownership of these policies. For example, as the IT secretary, I write that policy, but there are 20 other things on my plate, and this will be just one of the 20. It will get pushed out. So what we have done, this is true of all policies also, including the e-waste policy, that we have created an institution. We have created institutions whose sole responsibility is to translate policy into action. And the institution that we have created in Telangana is a center of excellence on e-waste. And again, we have set it up in a partnership mode. So because e-waste is a very important national mandate as well, we have been able to work with the government of India, the Ministry of Electronics and IT, MeitY as it is called. MeitY has an institution in Hyderabad, which is called CMET, Center for Materials and Electronic Technologies. So we have decided to locate the Center of Excellence at MeitY. So it's a joint effort by the government of India and the state government. And we have also been able to design a roadmap of what we will do. So first of all, there are people who are going to work in the Center of Excellence. They have understanding of e-waste. They have themselves worked in the sector before. So they are industry insiders, so to say. And we have created a big roadmap, a series of a bucket of activities which will be happening over the next 5 years to ensure, and this includes the entire chain, right from the consumer and creating awareness amongst the consumer, to rag pickers, to recyclers, to refurbishers, the large IT companies, the large users. We also know that lots of science and technology has improved in e-waste refurbishing, recycling, etc. Lots of startups have done some great work, and we have been able to find a place for all of them in our roadmap. I'm happy that Shalini is involved in organizing today's webinar. Her e-waste exchange itself is something which we feel very upbeat about, because this is a fantastic idea of bringing the consumers and the users at one place with the recyclers and refurbishers, etc., etc. So this is what I wanted to share, that first of all, the government has to show intent that it is concerned about a particular part of the economy where sustainability, where circularity is very important. And we have picked e-waste, not to say that we are not concerned about the rest of the waste which is generated. But as I said, I'll confine myself using this particular example of e-waste. The second is that the intent has to be demonstrated before people. So we have come out with this policy. And again, this is a policy which has been prepared with lots of consultation, with lots of bottoms up, lots of grassroots kind of input. So it's a policy which is very implementable instead of a very hypothetical policy. Then create institutions, bring the best talent to run these institutions, and then prepare a comprehensive roadmap, take responsibility, who will do what, and do it in a partnership approach. So national government, state institutions, the pollution control board, the private sector, the large ones, the small ones, the niche ones, individuals whose livelihoods are involved or integrated in this business, and most importantly, startups, because they are doing some very, very amazing work. So this is a very comprehensive and meticulous way of planning the sustainability focused circular economy aspects. And we have just begun. So I am not claiming any great results that we have done this or done that, but happy to share with you that this is the approach that we follow in Telangana. And as I said, we'll be very glad to take inputs from other participants also. As I said, I may be in and out, but happy to request Shalini to share important notes and actionable points with me later in the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. I mean, very enlightening and fully insightful. In fact, I'm glad that the timing is so good that you will be gathering a lot of inputs from here, plus all the good work which is being done by your government that will directly or indirectly feed into tomorrow's session with the Honorable Prime Minister. So thank you so much, sir. And with that, Dr. Shalini Sharma, I hand it over to you to share about your initiatives and also lead through the fireside chat. Over to you, Shalini.
So thank you, Tarun. Thank you for co-hosting this. And as we can see, a lot of things happening at the government level here. Brief about myself and our activities. So as we were listening about the circular economy initiatives into the e-waste management sector, I will take ahead from there and introduce that a company, Sanshodhan and E-Waste Exchange, is an globally emerging company that has developed the tech-based circular economy model for electronic waste management sector that is recognized as highly commended the Circulars 2019 by World Economic Forum. And I'm also representing another organization that is Institute for Circular Economy and Sustainable Development Goals. So Institute is an NGO where we do a lot of activities on capacity building, training, R&D, developing the circular economy models for the various sectors, and completely focused on the circular economy and sustainable development goals. So from here, I am just moderating the fireside chat session now. I will request all the speakers to have their videos on. And here what we will try to do in this fire chat session, that very quickly, we will ask some short questions, quick questions, and the panelists, they will be replying the questions in say a few words or a sentence. And quickly we will be moving around all the panelists. But before that, I'm just launching a poll so you people can take half a second and reply to this poll. So it is only 30 seconds. You can start clicking on the poll.
Can't do that, Shalini.
It says hosts and panelists can't vote.
Yeah.
Can't do that.
Yeah. Speakers and panelists will not be able to do. So I think this poll is quite interesting and people are voting still. It is having just, I think, 10 more seconds. So first I will move towards Ms. Kanta, the first question for you, as soon as this closes. So we'll be moving around like Ms. Kanta, then Tarun, then Nithi, then Andrew, like that, one by one. And here is the poll ending. So we can see it's quite an interesting result. It says that what is required for transition from linear to circular economy. So many people are saying that awareness is required. And many people, 74% said that all of them, strategic intervention, awareness, funds, and political will, all together is required for transition.
Yeah.
So I have shared the results here.
Yeah. So do you want me to respond to this?
No. So we will go for, this was for the attendees. Audience. So we said, yeah. So the first question goes to Kantaji, that what are the 3 steps or strategies or any initiative you suggest for the effective implementation of the circular economy in India, particularly?
Right. So it could start either way, but let me start with taking waste as a resource. So we consider waste. So we take, we make, and we discard. So considering waste as a huge resource is the first step, and that starts from every person. Each one of us has to start thinking that we should not waste. Probably this can be reused, this can be recycled, this can be refurbished, this can be recycled. So that is the first step. Second step would be probably moving from a linear economy to circular economy, but in an inclusive way. So that is the second strategy. And we are using it in a different way. Inclusive could be in many ways. Inclusive could be in terms of products, services. Inclusive could be in terms of human beings. So men, women, young people, older people, and also including everyone, starting from the industry through to the commercial organizations, to companies, to everyone. So making it inclusive is the second strategy, I would say. And third would be role of state. And role of state, when I'm saying, it has to start showing itself as a leader. So walking the talk, as they say. But what Jayesh Ranjan sir just mentioned, that it has to have the political will. If Prime Minister himself is very keen to work on circular economy, then I think the message is very clear that the state wants to do something. But the state has a role beyond being a regulator. It has to be a facilitator. So bringing in right policies, bringing in incentives, bringing in budgets, bringing in implementation support, and also identification of right stakeholders, and supporting them with collaborative approach would be the third strategy, I would say. I don't know how much time I have, but these are the 3 clear things that come to my head.
That's right, 100%. So I'll come back to you, and we'll go to Tarun now, because Tarun is coming from the technology space. And Tarun, what do you think about the technologies can play a role for the sustainable development? Because, there's a lot of talk about the blockchain, IoT, then traceability, then transparency for sustainable development. That is a key requirement. So how do you think that technologies can play the role in this space?
So thank you, Shalini. And yes, technology and sustainability. Of course, technology plays a crucial role for sustainable development. Technology is changing our world, and it brings new challenges and opportunities for sustainability. I'm sure some of you must have heard our Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji speak at the National Technology Leadership Forum day before yesterday, where he did speak a lot on this topic as well. So it's actually driving right from the top in the country's agenda. This rapid exploration of technology is compounding other sustainability concerns associated with the growing population and urbanization. In my view, the potential for technology to contribute to solving environmental issues far outweighs the unintended negative impacts it may cause. Innovation in data generation and analytics, coupled with artificial intelligence and advanced robotics, as well as cloud computing, have opened the door to many positive impacts for sustainability. According to the Global E-Sustainability Initiative, GESI, technology has the potential to contribute to all 17 of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, including over 50% of the 169 sub-targets.
That's right. That's right. So we have also gained quite an experience on this space when we say there is a lot of talk about transparency in this sector, and Nidhi was talking about the fair wages or in like inclusion. So I can see what there is one question for Nidhi Dua. In MNS experience, how would you summarize the major role of government departments to facilitate the circular economy? And second is role of supply chain actors to ensure the circular economy. Because you were talking about that the supply chains are quite open in this, in your company. So some inputs on that, please.
Yeah, so I think the very fact that it's called circular economy, I think it's got a direct linkage to being inclusive. So everybody in the supply chain has to be included in it and plays a part in it. And it starts right from like the farmers, the cotton growers, and all the way, so it's about ensuring that that is sustainably grown. It has a minimal impact on environment. It is taking care of the social aspects because it impacts humans, all the way to the garmenting process, to the way it is sold. And eventually, once the garment is no longer needed, because it's worn out or you're fed up of it, then what do we do to prevent it going from the landfills? So what are the creative ideas we could put to use? So in a nutshell, that is the circularity we talk about in the apparel supply chain. In terms of government's role, yes, the governments do and should play a very important and pivotal role, because this does involve, you saw in your poll also, that it does require political will, political advocacy. It requires strategic planning. And I think the machinery of the state is very, very important, because this issue is much larger than any individual or any company to handle on its own. So everybody has to come together. So definitely straight intervention, policy rolling, incentivizing. Also, I think applauding good practices is very, very important, and sharing those wins with, in some forum. All those things are very important, which I think government definitely plays a pivotal role.
Yeah, that's right. So, Andrew, are you here? I think Andrew will be in and out, so we will wait for him to come back. So as Nidhi said, that's right. So you are having vendors from the different parts of the world, and I'm sure that you must be having quite a strong traceability mechanism also in place, because you need to maintain the timelines, you need to maintain the quality. So would you like to share any kind of particular technologies if you use for that, or how it goes?
So, there are multiple technologies. It'll not be right to name one particular, but there are multiple technologies. But all technologies aim at data transparency. Data is available to a large set of people. So, in the net end result that we're aiming from these is basically data availability. And also, if ever there is a need to go back that transparency chain, the ability to do that, you can backtrack and actually go through that chain and see that, how it is happening, and is it happening or not. So I think that is really the important aspect.
Yeah, that's right. So large and international supply chains need that kind of a traceability mechanism.
Yeah, especially if you want to be transparent, they don't need it. But yeah, if you, as a company, if you make it your vision that you're going to be transparent, and because, we are confident about what we are doing, we're confident about the raw material that is going into a product, and hence we are transparent. That we tell people that, okay, fine, we are transparent, we are doing everything which we feel is good for humans and for environment. And this is a supply chain, and you're more than welcome to have a look and see what is happening. So we basically opened our doors for them to see if they want to. And I think that's a very big testament in itself, that we've done that. So which means that like there is really something good that we have done that we want to showcase, you know. So I think the very fact that we've opened the doors just in itself says a lot.
Yeah. So here I would like to highlight one of the issue, particularly into the circular economy. And now, moreover, I'm talking as a CEO of e-waste exchange. So in our experience, we were also talking about the electronic waste. And especially when we talk about electronic waste, there are about 70 metals and rare earth metals are used there in making the gadgets, electronic gadgets and home appliances. So if we backtrack this whole supply chain, right from mining to the end of the life of the product, there is a lot of carbon emission happening. But if this material is going to the informal sector, then there is a lot of loss of critical metals and resources are also happening. And in between, there are rack pickers and informal players and child labor. So every kind of activity in between is happening. So how I see the producer's circular economy is a little bit different than the circular economy that is related to the waste, right? Then waste to new product. So that means cradle to cradle approach, which we are talking about. So I'm also having one of the questions here. If we talk about this concept in Europe, we are looking at the supply chain in terms of like raw material, then production, then consumption has happened. And for the manufacture, the supply chain goes as raw material, then production, then sale. That means distribution. Distribution has happened. And after that, it stopped. It stops. So what we as a circular economy practitioners, what they suggest is that it should not stop at the stage of consumption. It should stop at the stage, it should not stop at the stage of distribution. It should go beyond, and it should move ahead to the consumption and then waste, and then come back to raw material. So this is a kind of a mechanism that even we have developed for the e-waste. And I think many people are now trying to come up with the same thing for the textile, same thing for automobile, especially there are many participants from the different part of the world here. So I would like to share that India has recently launched a scrappage policy. And scrappage policy is related to the scraps for automobile sector. And the approach always, whenever there is an EPR for automobile or it is for e-waste, the approach is always that raw material to raw material. So in between, there are different mechanisms put up. There are different mechanisms like extended producer responsibility compliance, take back, then strengthen the recycling infrastructure, all those things. So this is the space wherein we are working on. So I'll come back to Tarun once again, talking about the technology in this space. Tarun, there was a discussion just now happening, and Mr. Jayesh Chandran said that there is a need of SDGs that need to be reported and indicated. So do you think any kind of technology or mechanism or strategy that should be adopted for monitoring sustainable development goals?
So I would say, Shalini, as I spoke earlier, there's nothing about a specific technology for this. I would say technology is the support and also the driver for all of these initiatives. So you can't, it helps you to fasten the process and also do it much more simpler and faster. So whether it is AI or blockchain or IoT, all of these are support structures, support ecosystems. You can pick and choose depending on the requirement and depending on the ecosystem. So I would leave it that. I would say that is definitely not a challenge at all. There's enough, and I would say under the program of Startup India and Entrepreneurship India, we have got such a wonderful ideas and the ecosystem which we are getting from so many people and so many entrepreneurs who have come up forward and built this technology. And I would again quote what our Prime Minister spoke day before yesterday at the NASSCOM Leadership Forum. He said that today, globally, everybody is looking at every individual in India, how tech in India is making a difference to the global ecosystem.
That's right. So here I can see one more question, two more questions rather. One question is about investment in R&D, especially by the big corporates. Any views on this subject?
So if I can come in here, Shalini, so I don't know about the individual companies, but I see a growing trend where companies are more willing to invest in R&D, definitely. And at least on paper, they are keen to walk that path where they're talking about circular economy. They're trying to be part of a better planet. So I think that is the first step, which is a great step to my mind, because they start putting it on paper at some stage, as Niti said, the accountability mechanism set in, where they also start making action plans. Some of the companies that I can think of, say IKEA being one, which is deeply committed to making the planet more sustainable. They're talking about natural fibers. They're talking about products that could be reused or at least could be recycled. I am sure Marks and Spencer does the same thing. So I see, we talk to many companies and we see there is a growing trend now, and which is a very positive thing. But going back to data, I think when you're talking about technology, I just wanted to come in here. Mobile technology has brought in a lot of change in the way we work, the way we communicate, the way we collaborate, the way we share. And in circular economy, these are some of the things which are very helpful. What is happening in Mexico, my colleague in Mexico was sharing what they're doing with women there. It's so much easier for our women here in India to learn. They could demonstrate on video how the flower production, the flowers are produced and then how they're recycled. Yeah. It's so much easier to do that. So not only mobile, but data for evidence generation, and evidence will bring change in the policies, right? And third would be for segregating waste, to also using machines, for example, for recycling. I know a firm which is also using paddy waste to bring in renewable source of energy for Coca-Cola plant. Yeah. Now these things without technology were not possible earlier, and now technology is making these things possible.
Yeah, sure. So I'm having one question. I think I can respond to that, and then I will come back to Kantaji about one very important question related to your job profile. Also, probably you are working in that space. A quick poll we are launching. One. So we are launching one more poll here in between for the participants to answer. And in the meantime, I'm replying the question of one of the panelists here. Somebody has asked that, is the circular economy not just about recycling? Are we not confusing? So actually, circular economy is not just about recycling. Circular economy is an approach that can that is for the products, whether we can extend the life of the product, we can reuse the product, and when there is nothing left for, and you know that it is the end of the life of the product, it should go back to the recycling. And recycling should be done in such a manner that you can recover the resources over there and come back, and these recovered resources should come back into the economy. So for example, in electronic waste, there is a lot of plastic, then there is tin, but there are also rare earth metals like golds and silvers, though it is in small quantities, but when you see the value of those quantities, value means in the terms of financial value of that material. So rare earth materials are more costlier than the other normally whatever we get. But otherwise, the bigger benefit of the circular economy is that you are not mining further. You are good to use that iron, that plastic, that aluminum once again as a raw material. So that is where it is. So second poll, I'm here on the second poll. What are the technologies useful for implementation of circular economy? And then many people, they said all of above, but we gave the option of IoT, blockchain, and artificial intelligence. 8% they voted for IoT. Next 8% they voted for blockchain, and yeah, more than 92% they voted for all of above. So coming back to Kantaji, one very important question as a UN women, when you work with various segments, generally it is seen that the women is more about 50% of the population, and the contribution to GDP is not really considered that they are really contributing for the development of economy. Or and many times whenever see their various sectors, especially if we see into the waste management sector, fair wages is one of the big issue. Child labor is one of the big issue. We are trying to tackle this by putting different mechanisms like IoT, then creating the databases where we are registering everybody. We from Sanshodhan has also launched a scheme like food, recycle for her education. That is one where we want to put girl children, whomsoever are the girl children of informal players, should go back to school, because government is providing the schools and the education at without any fees, but still these people are unable to leverage that kind of benefits.
Right.
Other benefit that the government is providing, that they are doing the life insurance for many people. They try to mainstream these people. They try to give the health card. But when these people are not really recognized, then there is no question that they get the health card and these kind of benefits. They are unable to leverage. So we from Sanshodhan create the database with the help of the municipal commissioners. Then we identify them. Then we try to mainstream them. How do you see this whole scenario in India? And do you suggest any kind of mechanism for supporting this kind of ecosystem to make it even better?
Yeah, sure. So, Shalini, being a UN body, a multilateral body, our first job is to support the government and align our programs with their priorities. So that is the first role we play. So that means whichever ministry we get a chance, we try to influence the policy to make it more inclusive, particularly in favor of women and girls. So that is the first role that UN plays in any country. Forget about India, not only here, but everywhere. And we are doing that very, very well. Second role that we play is to bring in good practices from the globe. So that means we don't scale up the entire program, but we do show a pilot here in the country. Mm-hmm. So if something good is happening in Bolivia, and even though it may not be a comparable economy, we still bring in good practices from there or from 2-3 different contexts and try to showcase it here that it works. If you apply 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these things will work. And then we leave it to the government to scale it up using their own resources. So that is the second role. Third role that we do it, that we really work with the communities to showcase that without inclusive growth, women will, and that starts with policy and gender responsive budgeting, women will be left out. And that we have seen across the globe. India is no exception, but in India, we are at 108 in terms of gender gap index from 149 countries. And we are sometimes every year we see ourselves sliding down instead of going up, which is very sad. And there are a number of indicators for that. Political representation is one of them. And that's how women's voices are not represented at right forums, whether it is corporate sector, whether it is political sectors or decision-making bodies, women are not there. And you are absolutely right. Women have not been paid the fair wages. Number one, they are not recognized as contributors or also they are much lower in the value chains, I would say. So when it comes to picking waste, sorting waste, washing waste, segregating it, these are women. When it comes to selling it to the market and the wholesalers, men come in. So they don't have any negotiation power when it comes to, let's take waste only. And I'm sorry to say, today I was attending a very high level meeting and there were 25 men and 3 women, and they're still, and it was on livelihoods, sustainable livelihoods, and they're still talking about papad making and achar making. We are fighter pilots, and yet we are there where we were 70 years back. It's very painful to see how attitudes don't change. So more we change, more we remain the same. Unless I intervene and say, hey, let's talk about bigger things. We are doing much more than making papads and pickles, right? So this starts from changing mindset, but I also see changing mindset is also something which is fictional in that sense. And I always give an example that when Commonwealth Games happened, and as in a state like Haryana, where people are very ka panchayats and whatnot, and the girls started bringing medals, 200 akhadas came up overnight in Haryana, where parents started taking their girls for wrestling, right? So where did the mindset go? So it is all related to incentivization. It's all related to jobs, government recognition, medals, stuff, photographs in the media. So why don't we also, so two things that definitely we can showcase is, as I said in the beginning, government has to showcase that they're serious about inclusive growth. And when I'm saying not taking women as beneficiaries, not taking women low in the value chains, not paying them lower wage, or not accepting those things. So that is the first thing we need to do. Second thing that we need to do is to upskill women, to say, you can also become wholesalers. You can also become retailers. You can also do multiple things. You don't have to accept low wages. So those are the two levels that we need to talk. Some of the things that we have done through our programs is the plastic waste management program with Coca-Cola, which we are doing in different states, has already become a success. We also work a lot in textile waste, where we work with pieces with women, but again, that's a low level of work which women don't earn much from. So, but there are different initiatives that we are working on, and being part of the solution, not being part of the problem.
Yeah. And thank you so much for providing these insights. I think this is great. Actually, very less people still in India, they realize, and I don't know, means with the experience, we can say that, okay, all over the world, the situation is not very different, if you say. So with this, I launched the third poll, and let us see if it goes ahead. And I will request the participants to please post their questions, because we are almost at the end of this session, and we can take, I think, one or two more questions if anybody is having. We have one question from Europe, but I think that's for Andrew. And Andrew, I think he wrote that his visitors are there, so probably he's out for meeting with them. But he's asked that it's great to hear about the UK approach, but why then UK is investing in the waste incinerators that is rather going against circular economy? So I think Andrew is not here, so we don't have many insights there to say for UK probably. And if there is any questions for India, we will be happy to take up one more question at this moment. So the poll that we launched was, so I think this should not be read, but it is like, which one point you think is, which one product you think that is most plastic intensive sector? It's a single-use plastic, e-waste plastic, shoes, or textile. But I think I should share here that it's not a single-use plastic that is intensive. Actually, the textile, the fabric is the sector that is most plastic intensive. So, and nobody replied for that actually. So plastic is using 60% of polymer. Then secondly, electronic waste is using around 40% of polymer. And then is single-use plastic actually this?
I think, Shalini, I'll have to kind of defend that, because textiles doesn't just mean polyester. It means cotton, which is completely natural, viscose. And yeah, so I think there are many types of textiles, it's just not polyester.
Many type of
so I definitely think that single-use plastic is the right answer.
Yeah. Actually, single-use plastic is not, because I'm not talking about viscose and cotton, because when viscose and cotton are used, they are cotton and viscose.
But they are textiles and fabrics, you know, so you cannot say that just polyester is fabric. Okay. And also, like, you know, wool and all the other natural fibers also form a part of textiles.
Yeah, so yeah.
Otherwise, which bucket would you put them in?
Yeah. Okay, right. So here what we mean to say that, suppose if we make the jackets, or we make kind of various polyester products, but we also make like different synthetic fabrics. So these are the kind of things that we are talking about. If you see really the textile that are low cost textile, generally they are using quite a lot of plastic.
I think I wouldn't, I'm really sorry, but I wouldn't, like being a specialist in this field, okay. I would beg to differ. Okay. And yeah, you know, yeah, so I would beg to differ on that, you know.
Okay, agree. Yeah. So one more answer we have here. Somebody said that I think packaging industry is the most plastic intensive industry, from groceries to e-commerce to food. That's right. One of the panelists, they have also written that the digital technologies are most important, because most important is to invent those materials, processes, products which can replace the existing product and practices. For sure. So we agree with many of these points here that are referred by the panelists. And with this, I think we are very close to the end of this session. I hand over to Tarun, and let us see. Tarun, any concluding remarks?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Shalini. I think this topic is such close to heart for so many of us that this can continue and we can continue. And I was actually enjoying Nidhi defending, because indeed she is an expert in this. And thank you, Nidhi, for sharing those insights as well. Before I close, I would also like to add, there was a question earlier. So as the company where I work, Sopra Steria, as a group Sopra Steria, the sustainability objective is driven from the top, and it is engraved in our DNA. So we as an organization have been recognized as a global leader on corporate climate action by its inclusion in the CDP Climate Change A list for the 4th consecutive year. In India, amongst many other projects, we are working for the Municipal Corporation of Mumbai in the essential services area of sustainability and waste management. All our community initiatives and also corporate souvenirs in India are delivered by our partners, Unico, iVillage, amongst others. And these companies only produce and encourage sustainable solution products. So yes, I think we are a very, very sustainable and e-waste focused organization. With that, I would like to thank all our eminent speakers and partners, British Business Group Delhi, Marks & Spencer's India, Sopra Steria and Sopra Banking Software India, Government of Telangana, UN Women in India, Sanshodhan and E-Waste Exchange, ICE, and SDGs. It was indeed a pleasure to have you all with us today. So this concludes the webinar. And before I finally sign off, I would like to specially thank all the attendees for attending. And we hope you have been able to learn and gather some useful insights. The findings of this webinar will also go to the ministry. And please, after this, if all the panelists and the attendees are able to share some of their insights and some other points as an email on the same email ID from where you got the invites and the registration links, that will be very helpful. So thank you so much. Have a great evening and have a great weekend, all of you. Thank you so much.
So thank you, speakers. Thank you, panelists, and have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you.